Welcome to episode number 11 of the Wisco Weekly podcast. As a reminder, this season 2, is themed lacking ideas, and so I try to bring on guests and talk about things that would help improve the customer experience for car buyers and sellers. My guest today is going to be sharing with us how a car buying app is changing how millennials shop and buy cars in this day and age. It's also Tuesday. Tuesdays are for Inophiles, so Kelly and I review another wine for you. So here it is what it is, and this is the Wisco Weekly podcast. Brown chicken, brown cow. Hey, what's up? Welcome back, listeners. This is a Tuesday episode. This is the Wisco Weekly podcast. I'm your host, Dennis Wisco, alongside co-host Kelly Cruz. Kelly, how are you, girl?
Hey there, doing good.
Excellent. Hey, so just real quick, so listeners, check this out. Kelly's going to be going to a bachelorette party, and I'm curious, Kelly, can a bachelorette party ever be a customer experience? I mean, correct me if I'm wrong here, right? But I think among every bachelor and bachelorette party, people are paying for this party. So technically you are a customer. So is there a customer experience in a bachelorette party?
That's a one way of looking at it. And I guess depending on where you're going and who's participating, customer experience can be interpreted different ways. But yes, we are paying for the weekend, renting a nice house in Carmel to celebrate our bride-to-be. So,
is there any data being used to optimize the customers? Are you getting targeted emails that is like, Kelly, you're going to get the room that is, going to be kid-free, and you get to just, release all these endorphins of being, single at a party?
You could ask the maid of honor that question, matron of honor that question.
Well, Kelly's going to report back to us after this bachelorette party she goes to see if there's any kind of customer experience.
Yeah, I'll think about that one. But it's a big week. Not only are bachelorette parties happening, but a close friend of actually both of ours. Shout out to Jonathan and Mabel, who had their first baby, a baby girl today. So congrats, guys.
Congrats. Is there a name?
Baby Stella.
Stella. Stella got a groove back. Oh, that's awesome. Well, Congrats to Jonathan and Mabel. Okay, listeners, today this is going to be a very interesting episode because I'm not a parent myself, but I'm certainly going to be very curious to my guest and his answers to how the car business is catering to millennials. So let's introduce the guest for this episode. Once upon a time, there was this philosopher, a cultural icon, part of the bourgeois class, who dubbed the phrase, "To all the kids all across the land, there's no need to argue, parents just don't understand." Yes, that was the Fresh Prince Will Smith. But did he have it right? Do parents not understand? Our guest for this episode has 22 years of experience working specifically at the OEM financial or lender level. For those who do not know what this is, every OEM or original equipment manufacturer, Mercedes, Audi, Toyota, Ford, have a lending institution similar to Bank of America, Wells Fargo, or a credit union. If you lease a car, the OEM lender has approved you with financing. If you have ever had a 0% interest rate, then you will have signed up with an OEM lender. Not only does our guest have a breadth of experience at the OEM lender level, but he's a father of 3, and not just any 3. The youngest is a freshman in high school, and the other 2 are in college. That means his eldest 2 are of driving and buying age. In the studio, from Chicago, sharing his insight as a parent of millennial car buyers and to dethrone the Fresh Prince, listeners, I bring to you the Vice President of Dealer Sales for AutoGravity, Mr. Chuck Schofield. Chuck, how are you, sir?
Good evening. Thanks for having me, Dennis.
Appreciate you coming by, sir. So, Chuck, one of the things I'm very curious, since you have a breadth of experience in the financial industry, let's call it the OEM financial industry, and with your kids who are, how old is your eldest?
So I've got a daughter who's a senior at UC Santa Barbara. She's 21. My son is a freshman at San Diego State. He's 19. And my youngest is actually a junior in high school, and she is of driving age as well. I'm chock full of millennials right now that want automobiles.
Well, so I'm curious then, as a parent then of 3 millennials, and you with such a strong background in finance, what either words of wisdom, do you have any stories that you've ever told your kids as a way to get them ready for the adult world?
I do. So being in financial services my whole life, credit has been, more of this religious thing. It would have been hypocrisy for me to borrow anything and not be able to pay it back. So most of those lessons revolved around the fact that the extension of credit is a privilege, and in order to understand that more deeply, you've got to have a good sense of what it is that you're paying for and why you're paying for it. So when my children were younger, as children do, when I mean maybe below the age of 10, they just assume everything's free, right? Yeah. Uh-huh. So it was one of those weak moments where I was overwhelmed with gimme, 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 and I had to sit the kids down and say, well, these things actually cost money. We pay for the lights. Mm-hmm. We pay for the television. I have to pay for the food. I have to pay for your clothing. And it got to the point where it became a useful exercise. Kids are, curious about everything. Where I actually sat them down, and this was sort of a happy revelation for me, and showed them exactly what I was paying for everything.
Interesting.
And when you're a child, under 10 years old, anything over $5 is all the money in the world. Uh-huh. So when you point to a car payment and mortgage and those sort of things, it turned into kind of a fun exercise. But it's interesting how the gravity of that exercise stayed with them for years to come. As I said, my daughter's a senior at UC Santa Barbara. So, in advance of that, she had to think about rent, she had to think about heating and all those bills that adults have to pay. And it wasn't the first time she had to deal with that. So that was kind of an interesting exchange.
Now, do you also did you introduce them to Excel and spreadsheets too as a way to?
I had a spreadsheet that I showed them. That's a whole nother podcast.
Now, was this you sat down with all 3 of them at once?
Yes.
Okay. About how old?
So the youngest was 4 at the time, so she didn't have much to say. Okay. But my son tended to be really curious about why I was paying so much for these things. So that was kind of an interesting exchange. But the point was that if you want these things in life, you have to understand that there's commitments to them, and that it's a real. It's really important, right? These aren't things that you want to take for granted. And I wanted to kind of convey the point that these things that we have are privileges, and not necessarily everybody is afforded them. And somewhere down the road in your life, before you make these decisions about what you want, you need to consider what is practical and how that's going to fit in your lifestyle.
Now, are the purchases that they make, and let's say not going to the grocery store buying some chips, purchases that they make to this day, are they kind of frivolous purchases? Are they meaningful purchases?
Yeah. So with the older 2, well, I guess with all 3 of them now, that they're not so frivolous anymore. Just because, the economics of everything are material. But I do think that discussion kind of put in their head that, all right, there's things you want and there's things you need. But of course, the way things are purchased are materially different.
You're right.
I'd have to write checks. And even as things became more automated, for folks my age, I'm 53 years old. I know you're shocked. I look so much younger, I'm sure.
That's that Midwest skin.
That's so sweet. I'll be back next week.
Yeah.
But it took a while for us to trust technology, right? It was the first time that you pressed a button and you kind of take it on faith that your money went from point A to point B. Mm-hmm. Our children are so far beyond that, they trust implicitly.
Right.
And so how they go about consuming now, in the context of, I think the lessons that I taught them, it's going to happen on their phone. It's going to happen on a computer.
Well, let me ask you this here. So I ran into, I flew back into the country from being abroad, and going through customs, right? So you have these kiosks at the customs, in which then at that point, that's when you enter in all your information, passport, where you were declaring what you're bringing in. But they now have a process where you can download an app and fill in all that stuff. Would you download the app and fill out your personal information on that app?
Yeah. So, for me, I think I'd be more inclined to do that today, just because there's so much experience. But what's interesting about millennials is they don't give it a second thought. There's no element of risk remotely in their mind about those
Is
sort
that
of things.
scary, though, for you as a parent?
I don't know if I should be scared or not, because technology is such that it's designed to protect and secure that information, and there's technologies that feed technologies that assure that. So, I'm of that age where we went from not even having computers and cell phones to having computers and cell phones. So, I've seen that transition. So we still carry with us some of these, views of the world and maybe what our sense of risk is, versus people who have, like my children, who have never been in a world without the internet, without computers, and really in their formidable years without cell phones. So it's just something that they've trusted
implicitly.
Exactly.
Well, so I guess this is then interesting, because having being in the car business and selling cars and dealing with millennials, this then brings up the idea that, well, all of a sudden now millennials are being brought up in an age where they're almost looking favorably now upon dealerships, and I would say part of it is, a lot of it is due to technology. And so obviously now you working with AutoGravity, you guys are kind of this solution to this bridge of millennials buying cars. I guess first off, I've been following AutoGravity for a little bit. Kelly here is probably a little bit newer to AutoGravity. Could you actually just kind of tell us a little bit about AutoGravity?
Yeah, you bet. So it's a digital platform that allows users to shop for automobiles and obtain financing on their phone, powered by their smartphone, and get an answer within minutes. So if you think about the traditional car buying experience, you got to slog your way down to a dealership, be introduced to a salesperson, try to convey what it is, your intentions are, and not really know what's available. All that's being configured right there and then. And depending upon the type of salesperson you get, the culture of the dealership, the brand you're dealing with, you can have various outcomes. AutoGravity allows you to do a lot of work up front and have a greater level of certainty and education before you go into the dealership.
Now, the app, though, so the presumption you're also making is that somebody knows exactly what they want.
Yeah.
If they don't know what they want, how does AutoGravity kind of fit within that scenario?
Yeah, so it affords you flexibility to compare payments, to run payments, to look at different brands, to cross shop. Our app is agnostic, so it's all brands, all dealerships across the country. So again, it affords you the ability to sort of pick and choose, and doesn't pigeonhole you into one lane or the other when it comes to dealerships or brands.
And so then for millennials, though, like your eldest is a girl. Does she care? Well, first off, I mean, I presume this is a given. Would you let your kids buy a car through this app?
I would. So let me take a step back too, and just give you maybe a more comprehensive view. It's a car shopping platform that again that affords you up to 4 lending offers, and we're in the process of building a platform where we're partnering with the largest lenders in the auto space, starting with the captive finance companies, right? Because that's where most things are done. And then who are the most pronounced banks in the industry as well. So we've got over 12 lenders right now, and some of the captives that we have on board are major names like Mercedes-Benz Financial Services, Volkswagen, Audi, Nissan, Hyundai, and Kia as well. So we're just over a year old in terms of the functionality of the application. We continue to build that. But what that provides the millennials is a car shopping experience over time that used to have to take place inside of the dealership, and that won't happen anymore as we continue to build this product. It could happen right on your phone.
Now, for your daughter, sorry, did you have a question?
Yeah, I was just going to ask, I was on the app today. Would you say the biggest part of the platform is more the lending side, the kind of looking for a car, which I noticed you can either shop for a local dealership, you could shop by type of car, or is it kind of a combination of both?
It's a combination of a lot of things. Primarily, it's an instrument for the user to educate themselves, well in advance of arriving at the dealership. But we have technology that feeds dealer systems, both from a customer information perspective and a credit approval perspective, and that's important because it's one thing to know what you want. And it's another thing to have some certainty about the financing elements of it. But when the dealership knows of what your intentions are, how they receive you when you walk in becomes a lot warmer, more productive experience.
Or on the flip side, it could be colder too, right? Because I've certainly witnessed where when you do have, when I'm working at a luxury store too, an Audi store, when you do have millennials coming in who, first off, they're never dressed that proper, but their clothes were still worth like $200. So they'll come in and, there's always the kind of immediate first impression that, okay, these people are going to try to get something that's way over budget. And how are we going to try to get them approved when, they're looking for an $800 payment, but they only make $45,000. They don't have enough down payment, blah, blah, blah. So I understand from the dealership side how all of a sudden when these customers are coming in, the customers already know they, if anything, their expectations are better managed, which then, yes, would lead to a warmer, pleasant interaction with the dealership because then it's no longer a guessing game.
Yeah, so millennials are and have been for the past several years this coveted demographic, and how they go about consuming.
Coveted and loathed, right?
Yeah, exactly.
At the same time.
Well, mostly coveted because we're going to spend money, and that's where people want to figure out how these transactions are going to work. But it's a dramatic difference than the way dealership business used to happen. Over the years. I don't want to date myself too much, but
you already said you're 53.
Yeah, so I mean, a transformational technological event in the car industry was the fax machine, and then maybe
the dot matrix.
Yes, yeah, and then maybe a computer, but smartphones and technology as it is today has transformed things in a much smaller timeline. So, that millennials are ready to buy everything over the phone. Is an enormous change for dealerships. So the race to get to, being more digitally inclined for millennials, for dealerships, I think is terribly important. And that's what we're working towards at AutoGravity. But to get back to your point about dealerships being able to receive the customer more warmly, when users use our app, the offers that they get are pre-approval, so there's some underwriting that goes on there. So it shouldn't happen that they walk into a store, with an offer that they can't afford.
Well, and so let me dive a little bit deeper. These approvals, when they're seeing a payment on their phone, that is based on any cash down that they have said that they would be putting down and accurate title and tax, so that as what's always the case when you see, let's say, a lease special is or even a financing special, right? Is you'll see a payment, it's a low payment, it's an attractive payment. You get to the dealership, and all of a sudden you go through the fine print, and that fine print ultimately means that your either payment is increasing or you have to put money down that you were not expecting. So if somebody sees this payment through AutoGravity, is it black and white? That's what they're, this is what they're seeing, this is what they're getting, and that's it. There's no more discussion from the dealership.
Well, it's not black and white. There are disclaimers on the app because we won't necessarily have a specific dealer price for every single transaction.
Understood.
Rather than getting too deep into the weeds here, but we, within the app, it's obvious that we state they're estimated and that tax, title, and license is not included. But that is consistent with the way advertising is done as well. Now, we have an ongoing product roadmap. Ultimately, we want to get to a point where we are a fully engaged end-to-end digital retail solution. And that's certainly what we aspire to over time. And that would look more like, Dennis, what you just described. It's just not where we're at in the journey right now. But the piece that we do provide is a greater level of transparency. And we think empowerment. So when you get to the dealership, you don't have to start at the very beginning. You're further on down the road, and there is some time stampings. And we do know that from customer and dealer feedback.
Now, I'm curious. So, take for instance your daughter. Your daughter uses this app. So I think one of the first things that I would be curious about, and again, not having the mindset of a millennial, is if I'm looking at this app and I'm looking at cars, do I even care what car it is, or am I just shopping payment, or how does the millennial process this car shopping process? Did I just repeat myself there? How does a millennial process the car shopping process through this app? Are they going, and are they just simply, hey, yes, let's go Mercedes-Benz C300, that payment looks good, great. And well, let's go to that, because then I have a follow-up actually after that.
So we're constantly garnering feedback, both from our users, from our dealers, input internally. And some of the lessons that some of the things, the more notable things that we learned was it's helpful when people are using the app to know that they're looking at a piece of live inventory. So now we have inventory feeds from our dealerships. We've got over 2,200 stores that have agreements with us, and over 1.5 million pieces of inventory available on the app. So there's 1.5 million cars you can look at.
New and used?
New and used. So that's piece one. Another piece of feedback we've been getting is having a component within the app, which we have now, and we continue to refine, is trade-in value. That's a material part of the transaction,
sure.
And to the extent you don't get that very right, then the preciseness of the payment might not be as helpful when you walk into the store. But we've implemented tools for it. What we're also looking at, and I think this is where you're going, Dennis, is we're affording users choices for different places to start. So some people may be thinking, I can afford $500 a month. I want to look at those. Some people want to look at a new Nissan, Hyundai, Kia, Mercedes right off the bat. We'll afford them an opportunity to look at that. Some person might be looking for a specific type of used car. We'll afford them an opportunity to do that in the very near future. Right now, you got to pick a newer used car, and then the shopping experience goes from there.
And so there's no so I could see this, right, where millennials, they're non-committal, pretty flippant. So all of a sudden they go through this process where they're shopping for a car. They choose, okay, here's the car that I want. They fill out their information. They get pre-approved. Now, they get pre-approved, and all of a sudden they change their mind. Does that dock the, I guess, is there a hard credit run, a soft credit run? How is that affecting the millennial at that point if they decide that they get this they're very emotional about it, and they decide, no, I don't want that car anymore?
Yeah. So what we do when they apply is we do a soft credit pull, and what that affords us is the ability to engage specific filters for our lenders, right? Because if there's not enough information on an application, or it's somebody who maybe isn't credit worthy, we don't want to send a bunch of activity to our lenders without them sort of pre-vetting them before it actually goes into underwriting, where they will have a hard credit pull.
Can you actually, let's go back one step. Can you just explain the difference between a soft and a hard credit run?
So generally speaking, a soft credit pull looks at more of a summary of credit components, and a hard credit pull is a feed from a credit bureau that shows all your trade lines in great detail.
Yeah. So
which is essential for underwriting.
So would you say at the point where you're doing the soft credit run, you do not have to give your social security number at that point?
You do give your social security number, but an inquiry does not show up on your bureau, and that's really the event that triggers that can trigger impact to your credit score.
Right.
this is like if you were to use like Credit Karma, right? Credit Karma does soft pulls, doesn't affect your credit score. Right. You can pull it a number of times, but as I've experienced, when somebody does run their credit score through, or they use Credit Karma and they see they have whatever, a 750, by the time they go into the dealership and we do a hard run, I can't think of a time that score ever went up. It certainly goes down though. As you said, there's more lines now of credit that are pulled, which obviously weighs on it fairly negatively though.
It can, and it depends on how many polls are ultimately done. But again, the intent of AutoGravity is to afford customers financing offers, true financing offers.
Well, and the reality is these millennials, they don't have credit anyway. So,
well, yeah, that's so some do. Most of our users on the platform are millennials. Over 50% of them are.
Wow.
But yet,
what does that number translate to specifically, though?
In terms of the percent that are considered millennial overall,
yes.
I don't know that off the top of my head,
but
it's more than half.
How many users have used AutoGravity?
Yeah, so we're over 1.6 million users.
Wow. In how much time?
Since October of 16.
Wow.
So, just to give you, maybe a more recent comparison, in January last year we had about 42,000 users, and January of this year we're over 1.6 million, and we've had in excess of $2 billion requested in financing. So this thing continues to grow, and we're not even near a steady state yet.
So, okay, we're actually going to do a quick segment. We're going to take we won't take a break. We're going to go into this quick segment, and then we're going to get right back into this. Chuck is going to be joining us, yes?
Yes, I am.
Wow, all right. So, of course, listeners, it's Tuesday. Tuesdays, we're doing our normal You in a File You.
You in a File You.
So, You in a File You. Today we have a 2015 Conundrum. It's a blend. We're going to try this out here, all three of us, and we're going to try to describe this here for you. Are you guys all ready?
Wisco, what's our price point on this bottle?
Okay, this one was actually $25.
Okay.
On sale. I think normal price was $35.
Next time I'll taste and then try to guess what the price point is.
Actually, yeah, that's a good one. Okay, so Chuck, let's just give you a little bit here. Let's pour myself some here. That's a generous pour to me. And Kelly, for you. All right, Chuck, we're very novice at this. So we're going to try to use our wine vocabulary.
Okay.
You try to do the same. Let's try to describe this wine here. Ooh, it's kind of nice.
A little bit stronger flavor than At least our last tasting, I think.
It's very, it kind of has like this candy-ish taste to it. It's not so sweet though, but it's I don't know. What do you think, Chuck?
It does have a candy-ish taste to it, and a little tart as well, and strong. But it's tasty. I enjoy it.
It's pretty smooth. I feel like you get a tartness right when you first taste it,
Yep.
but it evens out pretty quickly. And
It's smooth all the way through. It doesn't have a long finish, but it's pretty smooth. I am a little bit like salivating.
is that a good thing?
I don't know. I mean, it definitely makes you want to have a little bit more.
Nice rich color on it.
So I'll post a picture of this on Facebook. It's a 2015 Conundrum, and it's a red blend from, where is this from? Fairfield, California. I tend to stay away from California wines because I just want to try new things, but anyhow.
I'm with you. I'm usually just not a big fan of California wines. I don't know enough to say, I love Oregon or Washington, but usually outside of California, I find more.
Would you recommend this?
I would.
Yeah?
I actually even like it a little bit better than the one we had
Last
on
time?
our last episode.
I kind of like that one a little better.
Oh, well,
This
two
one,
different palates.
This one is almost like, this would start a wine tasting or a flight of
That's
wines.
what you said about the last one.
Well, I guess
I don't go with rich reds for the start of my tasting.
I
but
always-
I would start with the Pinot.
When I wine taste, I always think of it in terms of a flight and where this would stand in a flight. And this one would be like, I would probably peg this at like a 2.
You're always thinking ahead to your next glass.
Oh, you have to. You have to. Chuck, would you recommend this? Would you have this at home?
I would. I'm recommending it right now because it's free.
It's easier.
All right, so let's get back here to millennials buying cars. Chuck here is talking to us about AutoGravity and how the digital platform this company and this app provides make it a very transparent process for millennials to see what payments they're getting so that they're more educated along the way. And specifically as we then kind of look at some, his kids and how they would then look to use this app and buy this app. Chuck, how would your kids, would you be okay if your kids, let's say all 3 of them, used this app, bought a car, and did not tell you about it?
Well, if they could afford it, and they were of age, I don't know that
They
I'd
get
have,
approved.
that I'd have much to say about it. But if you're asking do I have confidence in this app, and what it provides, I do.
Yeah, because I remember one of the cars the very first car that I bought without my parents' help, and my dad specifically was like, "Yeah, Dennis, let me know when you want to buy that car. I'll give you money for it. I'll go with you." Blah blah blah. I decided I would just go do it myself. Then later on, I showed up at his house. I said, "Dad, I bought the car," and it's not that he was mad, but certainly he was there to essentially protect my interests. I could see then an app like this where maybe the confidence you have because you're familiar with it is, well, your kids know now what to expect. So other than the car itself, in terms of the financing dollars and you being a financing guy, you have full confidence if your kids were to use this.
I do. So there's so much more information available now as to buying cars than ever before. You can look at invoice prices. They're available just about anywhere pretty easily. The financing piece is more of a mystery. Mm-hmm. And we're powering that on our platform here.
Does it go for financing and leasing?
Yes, financing and leasing. And in partnering with these captives and with banks, with the captives in particular, where they have special finance rates, those will be conveyed in the app as well. We've launched cash rebates and those sort of things. So where a manufacturer has those incentives on specific cars, those flow through to the app. So when you're comparing payments, that's reflected in the payment. And to the extent that we're really clear on all the economics, it makes for a more compelling offer, and I think greater intentions on the part of the buyer, and that's important for dealers.
Chuck, we were talking a little bit before we started the show tonight that I'm a habitual leaser. And up until this point, the last 7 or 8 cars that I've leased, I've just been used to going directly through the dealer and using their financing program. What is the benefit, or are you likely to get a better financing opportunity through AutoGravity than just going to the dealer directly?
So I think where our app is concerned, there's an element of time and convenience. So anything that is offered through the dealership would be available through the app as well. Mm-hmm. So I think that might be sort of a personal choice on when, where, and how. What's that experience been for you historically? If it's pleasant, then perhaps there isn't a reason to change it. But there's nothing wrong with looking at lease offers change, ebb and flow all the time.
Right.
So you may come to a fork in the road where you're entertaining other brands and you want to shop and see what's available in terms of payments for them. So yeah, there's functionality that continues even for existing customers. But again, offers don't stay the same all the time, so there's nothing wrong with double checking either.
Got it.
Is there millennials buying cars for the first time? A lot of times they may not know exactly how it works. They see the car, they see the payment, they have a job, everything looks great, and so they check the box, they get these approvals. Is there any point in the process, though, that there is still something that the millennial does not, is there anything that they may get surprised by, or would they not get surprised by because everything is laid out to them? Yeah.
So, well, nothing is foolproof. Here's some of the the safety nets that we're affording our customers. We have a concierge service that they can contact that will literally contact the dealer and the user and go over anything that maybe wasn't clear in the app in terms of what needs to happen at delivery or when they get to the dealership. Do you need your driver's license? Do you need insurance? What time? It will actually set appointments as well. Where the functionality of the app is concerned, we're starting to introduce additional steps that once you're approved that say, when you arrive at the dealership, here's the information you need to present that will be familiar in language to the dealer that they deal in every day, and then any other sort of typical stipulations, like I already said, driver's license, insurance, that sort of thing. Now,
so a lot of this process, as you mentioned earlier, then happens before they would get to the dealership. I presume it can be used when the customer is at the dealership as well. I mean, let's just say that it's a Saturday. They've spent the 2 hours to look at the cars, but all of a sudden they've heard of AutoGravity. They have it ready on their phone, and then they can go through this process right in front of the dealer as well. Then is that?
Yes, they can. That's a great question and a great point. And we have some other platforms as well that dealers will find useful. We have what's called a web widget that gets embedded into the actual dealer's website. So if a customer winds up at the dealer's website, maybe not using our app, and lands on a car, we've created functionality where the dealers would include a get pre-approved button. Customer would hit that button, and what pops up is really our app. It's powered by AutoGravity, and then it provides the same functionality. So that can actually happen in dealerships. We've had anecdotal examples of where dealers employed that, where the F&I office was backed up and the customer was more or less committed, and what was left was the financing piece. They went into our web widget, got their approval right away, and that saved them an hour, 35 minutes. It all matters.
This is great. It's like the Starbucks app. You walk in, there's a long line, and I just order my coffee on the app, and it's ready before the people standing in line.
Right.
Yeah, and I'm standing in line, and then so I see you, and I'm going to get all pissed off knowing the fact that somebody's expedited this process. So Chuck, when it comes down then to it, at the end of the day, this app here is meant to serve not specifically millennials, right? That definitely is a target demographic, but it's obviously not just for them, right? So this is meant to create transparency in the process. If I'm a dealer, though, okay, because at the end of the day, right, there's still a human element to all this. That customer is still going to be seeing and meeting with a dealer. And of course, if there's this element where this app has, while maybe it's expedited some things along the way, if it's I don't know, I guess it's all going to boil down to if it's taken money out of my pocket, would a dealer in this program all of a sudden not provide the level of service this AutoGravity customer deserves?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we will say straight out that we always believe and continue to believe that dealers are important. Dealers sell cars, right? So you can have all the technology in the world, but ultimately they need to go to the place that has the car they
Right.
want
Yep.
and engage that. So where is this helpful for dealers? So if you think about the way the auto industry has progressed over the years, it's highly regulated. It's fiercely competitive, and it gets sort of more so every single day. What that does from a dealer's perspective is it compresses margins, right? So they're always looking
Right.
for tools that'll help extract cost. And if you talk to any dealership, they'll tell you that the OEM requirements, the facility requirements, just the brand requirements have become more and more pronounced. Matter of fact, they'll even work margin elements into the type of facility you have, what are the customer survey results, and. So how you spend time at the store, how many people you employ, what you pay them, all matters. So to the extent that there is technology that moves the process more quickly, more seamlessly, and is happier, there's a material financial impact to the dealership.
Absolutely.
I've asked dealers before I came to AutoGravity, if you had a reliable automated process where when the customer came in, you knew what they were coming in for, you had visibility to it, which is what our app does, and you were largely in agreement with what they wanted to do, maybe tax, title, and license, those sort of things that you would expect anyways, and all that worked as you would hope, how many more cars a day could you sell? And the answer that came back was on the best day, given current conditions, their best salesperson, if everything went perfectly, could sell 3 cars a day. 3 cars, one person in one day. And if all these things happen perfectly, they could probably sell 5. Now think about that. That's a 67% increase. And when you layer all the economics on top of it, because of enabling a digital strategy, that changes the economics for dealerships materially. Now, when we talked about information that's available for new cars down to invoice price, how do you make money on that? Where do you go for it? A customer walks in and points to that car, that VIN, and says, here's what
Right.
Edmunds published, or pick any of those or any of those vendors. On top of that, every manufacturer wants to sell more cars,
Right.
so you're getting more and more cars produced. So wherever you can introduce tools or engage partnerships that help with that process, those are the game changers for dealerships going forward.
Well, I mean, to take this a little bit on a larger level here, it's, to me, what I think one of the things that will start to happen in the automotive space as a result of companies such as AutoGravity. You painted a picture which I think is pretty accurate, in that the dealer principals, the owners, the executives want a very streamlined process, because at the end of the day, the marginal cost to streamline everything is a 67% increase in sales a day, right? And that's huge. On the flip side of that, I think what'll start to happen is you are going to start to see more dealerships employing less commission-based salespeople, and they'll go more to hourly, more to quote-unquote product specialists. Now, this will be perhaps another conversation down the road. But on one hand, from the dealership principal side and from the customer side, that seems to be the synergy that makes the most sense. Then anything kind of below that, again, maybe that's a gray area, a point of contention that can be debated, until there's a solution for that. But
yeah, so it's not going to happen overnight. But millennials are this enormous group of people, that I think they're from a consuming demographic perspective, they're bigger than baby boomers, right? So if you're not, and that change is going to happen more dramatically than what we've seen in the past. So dealerships have to be prepared to transition to those sort of things. The auto industry has typically been sort of slow to change. But this is going to be a material transformation. And that's why providing digital solutions and technology as we do is going to become so important, because the folks who tend to be more progressive minded, be it OEM or dealerships, are the ones that are going to win. And I don't disagree that we always try to be really careful with this language. We're not saying that we or any one technology is coming here to transform any business. We see the need and we see the behaviors already, and we're trying to provide solutions that are going to enable that behavior in the car buying space.
Well, you hit on a great point right there, because certainly all the statistics are showing that millennials are buying at a much faster pace than Kelly, our generation, if we're considered Generation X, and certainly then there is now a tool for them to use that is fitting of how they've grown up in this tech culture. So that's great. Well, Chuck, is there anything else you'd like to add with regards to AutoGravity or yourself, your kids? You want to give a shout out to your wife?
Hello, honey. My wife Donna's at home. She buys cars too, so this will. By the way,
yeah. So, do you have any stats with regards to? Well, I don't know the best way to phrase this, but like when it comes to gender, I guess to me, if millennials can use it, that means then it's also friendly to women.
Yeah, I don't have those stats. As to millennials, as I said before, more than half the users on the platform are millennials.
Yeah. Well, I would think it would be friendly then to women as well, who aren't as well versed in car buying. Certainly, that's not the case with Kelly over here.
Do you think that's the case, Kelly? I think some gals are well educated in car buying.
I would say so.
Well, you were like probably one. You're probably one out of every maybe 7 women are pretty educated about buying cars.
You add on the fact that I learned from my dad to be a shrewd negotiator, which our listeners may know by now, as I'm always going for money-saving tips, and I almost went down the path of asking about price, but I think we got some of those answers. So.
Well, price, that price is left all up to the dealer and the customer still to work that out. The app is just kind of serving as that, as the middle ground to streamline everything in between that.
Well, the other nice thing about the app, too, is you can use it when you want to, where you want to, and as deeply as you need to within the sales buying process, right? You may just be shopping at one point, and there may be a car that catches your eye. And wherever your personal situation, all those important things intersect and you're ready to buy, you will have done all of those things in advance. So now it's just a more comfortable way to go about buying a car, and it doesn't all happen in one moment at a store. Yep. And with all the pressures that come along with it, perhaps.
Yep. But dealers will find that I was going to ask if you can take the deal you put together online, you get approved for financing, you walk in, and my first question will be, can you beat this? Even though I got it online, I want to know if there's a better price.
Yes.
That's my...
Happens all the time.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. So no, it doesn't
Very
hurt to
sure.
ask, right?
Of course
He always
not.
laughs at me, but, you know.
Kelly would get Kelly would get like the best offer. You know, she'd shop around every single deal, every financing deal. She'd get the best offer, and she would still take that deal in and ask for something better. But hey, kudos to you.
You know, both on the consumer side and the dealer side, both parties, I think I can speak for both, want the least amount of friction possible.
Absolutely.
And what we increasingly find, and I think dealerships too, is when there's transparency, people are more agreeable.
Mm-hmm.
When things are out in the open and you see something that looks like a good deal, you're probably less inclined to continue to grind. And the need to want to continue to negotiate and grind isn't a pleasant thing either. You almost got to psych yourself up to do that. So that's not like a behavior that people aspire for when they're looking for a car. So when you can take those things out, it's just it's a happier transaction.
Yeah.
Instead of asking 5 times for a lower price with AutoGravity, I may only ask once. So
Or twice.
yeah, maybe.
Chuck, how can people find you?
Me personally?
Yes, sir.
Our office is right at the intersection of Sand Canyon Road and Irvine Center Drive in Irvine. You can find me on LinkedIn. Again, I am the Vice President of Sales and Dealer Development for AutoGravity.
Cool.
And that's about it.
Excellent. Well, Chuck, thank you for coming on by, and thank you for sharing some of the more personal things of your life about your kids and how they view, the car buying process. I hope it wasn't too uncomfortable for you.
It's fine. He gave me wine. How bad could it be, right?
Oh, I like that. We're just going to give him more wine, and we'll see what else he'll talk about. So, listeners, AutoGravity is an app. Check it out. Download it. I've downloaded it myself. Peeked around. It's definitely very useful. It can streamline the process. As you heard from Chuck, one of the bigger benefits of it is being able to see some of the different financing options you have, and again, not just numbers that you see, but actual deals that you can hold a dealer accountable to. Of course, not to the penny. So check out AutoGravity.com. Download the app. Kelly, anything else for you?
No, I think I'm all set.
Well, listeners, thanks for tuning in. Again, check us out on Thursday is going to be a dealer episode. Check us out next Tuesday. And next Tuesday will actually be our last customer episode for season 2. We'll have something planned for that one. So stay tuned for that. Of course, always check us out on Facebook. And actually, especially when we take a little bit of a break, please do follow us on Facebook. We will be posting just some little clips here and there for your audible engagement and audible, I don't know.
Experience?
Yeah. My mind was actually going off in a different direction there. So check us out on Facebook, on Twitter, and of course, WiscoWeeklyPod.com is our website. On behalf of Kelly and myself, cheers to the customer experience.